Good evening, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Rick Davis, and I'm the Dean of the College of Visual and Performing Arts at George Mason University. It is my extraordinary pleasure to welcome you to this live chat experiment in our Mason Arts at Home series. This is called Alumni Cocktails and Conversations with the Dean, and some of us are better prepared than others for the cocktails part. We have various things waiting for us, yes. So raise a glass. We mean that very seriously. This is a very informal operation today. This is part of a larger initiative at the College of Visual and Performing Arts called Mason Arts at Home. And I just want to talk to you just briefly about that series because it's been a very important response by the College of Visual and Performing Arts to the COVID-19 pandemic, where of course by mid-March or so, we started to realize that we had to close down all of our performances and exhibitions and public screenings and all of the public work that we were doing, as well as shift all of our classes, hundreds and hundreds of classes, to an online delivery format. And we joined the rest of the world in this radical moment. We joined it with good spirits and of course a tremendous sense of loss, but also a tremendous sense of opportunity. And our students have been responding magnificently, I will say generously, to what we've been able to provide. The faculty has been working overtime to translate material that, as you all know, most of which does not lend itself to easy transition to an all digital format, but the faculty and staff have really worked to make that happen, and it's working by and large pretty well. So for all faculty and staff and students of CVPA who are listening, thank you once again for your tireless work in service of this moment. The other thing, of course, is what do we do to continue to get our creative work out into the world? Because we do this work not just for ourselves, but for our audiences and our communities. We have a motto in CVPA that we've been using now for a few years, and we call it our 4-word elevator speech. The arts create community. And in this time of purposeful isolation, it's even more important, we think, to create communities intentionally and positively and share the joy of creation and creativity with a community, even though we can't gather and become the literal community that we've been used to. So this is an experiment in creating a community of our wonderful CVPA and Mason Arts alumni. CVPA has been a college for just about 20 years. We were founded in 2001. And of course, the Arts at Mason go back for a good 20 years before that. And we have representatives on this call today from near the founding era of the modern era of the Arts at Mason, and we have people who are recent graduates, and we have many people joining us, I can see, as the board continues to fill from many different disciplines and many different eras of the College of Visual and Performing Arts. So that's truly an honor to be with all of you. I would like to ask for just a couple of volunteers. We have 4 distinguished panelists who are with us, and they have been gracious enough to volunteer to speak at some length about their careers and their responses to the current moment and all of that. But I see a whole bunch of names here that I recognize, a few that I don't. But if anybody feels bold enough to raise your virtual hand using the Zoom raise your hand feature, we will try to call on you and just tell us who you are and where you are, and maybe one sentence about what you're doing. And we'll just take a few folks to kind of get the conversation started before we turn to our distinguished panel. Kirsten, oh, you've been there in my screen for a while now, and now I want to call on you. Kirsten, what's up with you?
First off, thank you for saying my name correctly. I get Kirsten and Kristen all the time. I am an arts management alum, graduate in 2016, and I currently work as Adventure Theater's production stage manager. I am responsible for all of the live presentations that are happening on Adventure's webpage every Sunday.
Wow.
So all of these live readings that you can go to our Facebook page and watch, or on our YouTube page, that I am controlling all of that.
Fantastic. Welcome. Welcome to our merry band, and congratulations. I just saw a familiar face pop onto my screen, and I'm going to call on him even if he doesn't want to be called on, because he is actually a member of Mason Arts at Home artistic cohort with a guest appearance, I think, tomorrow, I think, right? I'm talking about Zach Wilcox. Zachary, what are you up to? Take your mute off. There he is.
Hello. Yes. I'm on my tablet, so it's not really handling Zoom well. And I apologize for my appearance. It is near bedtime. But yes, I'm very happy to be here. And tomorrow, I'm having a reading and discussion about my play, Tangier Island is Sinking. So I'd love to see all of you there, but also I'm just here to hang out. So.
And are you in the UK right now?
I am. I'm in London. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So now we have another continent represented. So we're
Yes.
really global on this call. And I'll just say something about Zach's event tomorrow has just appeared in the chat room. Zach was one of the first winners of our Young Alumni Commissioning Competition, and we're about to learn about his work based on that commission. Of course, it was going to have a full staged reading in 2 different venues this month, but that did not come to pass. So we're making the best of it, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, this is fantastic. We're gonna go to our a panel here in a minute, but I want to encourage everybody who is tuned in to, if you have questions, comments, or revelations that you'd like to make later in the call, we're going to have time at the end. So we'll go around again and hear from you. One of the reasons we're here is to spread information about ways in which we are trying to support the artistic community and focusing our not unlimited resources on our own family, on our own CVPA family. And so I'll just take a couple of moments to talk about some funding opportunities. I already mentioned the Young Alumni Commissioning Project, which we've just announced the 2nd round of those awards just a couple of weeks ago. And we're looking forward to seeing what those artists in dance, music, and film this time will do. We also have a more immediate funding opportunity called the Alumni Artist Support Initiative. And this was created directly in response to the COVID-19 closures. There are 2 streams of funding, modest amounts, but I think it could be important. It could certainly help spur some work. We have $500 awards to stream digital content as part of Mason Arts at Home. And that is available if you have digital content already prepared that you can contextualize for us, that you can make attractive for our audience, whether it's alums, fellow students, members of our larger community, and the information for that will be in the chat if it's not already. Yes, there it is. The second one is a little bit longer range and has a little bit more cash attached to it. We have 5 $1,000 awards to commission new works as part of the 2020-2021, say that fast 5 times, the 2021 season of the Center for the Arts, because it is our 30th anniversary season coming up at the Center for the Arts, opened in 1990. It also happens to be the 20th anniversary of the college and the 10th anniversary of the Hilton Performing Arts Center, all in this pretty much the same year. So we have a 30-20-10 kind of celebration going. Details in the link in the chat, Ryan has just posted, and we really hope that we can both serve our alumni community by providing these modest financial incentives, but also generate some great work to fill our days and nights, our airwaves, and eventually perhaps our stages and galleries and walls and screens next year in celebration of the anniversary. So you should have all received those anyway by email, but here's another opportunity to look at that. Now, 2 more things. Because the magnitude of this crisis is so large and because it's so pervasive, of course, a lot of philanthropic organizations and individuals have stepped up to offer ways of helping artists cope in this unprecedented moment. And we're going to post some resources on those in just a moment, but I wanted to highlight two very quickly. One is called Artist Relief, and it's simply Artist Relief, one word, artistrelief.org. It's a coalition of national grant makers, and they've come together to create quite a sizable emergency funding initiative. They've given a lot of grants already. It's a quick moving process. The amount is $5,000 typically. And there's a bit of a local connection to this one because one of the administrative partners in it is Creative Capital, which the director of the School of Art, Professor Hassan Elahi, is a board member of. And we were talking just the other day about the good work that Creative Capital is doing with regard to the Artist Relief Initiative, artistrelief.org. And then finally, something that's very heartwarming because it's so organic and so individual and so just really from the grassroots, fittingly enough called the Artist Relief Tree, which was started just a few weeks ago and has generated already a sizable amount of money, well over $1 million largely in small donations. And you'll find on the web almost any night, you'll find it seems to be a lot of opera singers from Wolf Trap and from the K. Fritz Young Artist Program at Washington and from LA Opera and from Arizona Opera and from a whole bunch of other places, putting together really fun content, some of it live from living rooms, all done with proper social distancing, of course, sometimes with remote accompaniment, sometimes with roommate accompaniment. And that's artistrelieftree.com. And there's a local connection there as well. So those are two organizations that are really stepping up to the plate, and Ryan has posted links on those. And of course, there's a whole bunch more, but we wanted to not let this opportunity to go by without informing you of some of those opportunities. But now, the moment we've all been waiting for, our featured alumni guests. We have assembled an eclectic, distinguished, and I must say altogether delightful panel of Mason Arts alumni, one of whom I can't even call a CVPA alumna because she predates the founding of the college, but she doesn't predate my time at Mason. I came to Mason in 1991, and Valerie Wheeler, who's our first guest, was already here as a student and graduated in 1994 and has had a distinguished career in the theater and opera worlds, as well as in the events production world. She's a production stage manager who seems to be always working until this moment happened. And she's worked for the New York City Opera, Carolina Opera, Chautauqua Opera, many opera companies on the West Coast. And she is going to tell us about her life as a freelance production stage manager. She'll be our first speaker. Our second speaker, Tieu, is an alumnus from the School of Art, and he is a senior product designer with Netflix. So he's been very busy these days, keeping us entertained and alive and otherwise connected to life as we know it. And our third guest, Anqi, is an arts management grad from 2011, I believe, but she'll correct me if I'm wrong. And she is currently in Shanghai, China, where she is a marketing executive with Universal Pictures. And our final guest, who's already been named by Patrick just a few minutes ago, Kelsey Hunter, a graduate of the School of Art who lives in New York City and is made it on the Forbes magazine 30 under 30 list, which is an amazing distinction. She's the founder and CEO of Paloma, and she's going to talk about the transition in her career and what she's doing today as well. So what a great panel. We are grateful to all of you for being here. I'd like to now turn the floor over to Valerie Wheeler. Valerie, what's up?
Hi, Rick. Not much. I put on fresh pajama pants for this, so I'm ready to go. As Rick said, I graduated from Mason in '94. I started there in 1990. And we were just a theater program at the time. But I had an amazing experience. First of all, I am a production stage manager. I do work predominantly in opera, but I do have an intensive background in event management, in straight theater, musical theater, dance, ballet. In fact, just last week, I was paid in a roll of toilet paper to help a friend of mine live broadcast one of her studio dance pieces. couldn't offer to pay me, but she said, since my studio is closed, I have lots of toilet paper. So that's one for the books. Paid for a gig with a roll of toilet paper. But so I've been helping friends, produce their content while I'm not able to do live productions, real fully staged productions. So completely unemployed except for that toilet paper. So that's good. I have worked, like Rick said, for the New York City Opera, for New Orleans Opera on the West Coast, Opera Santa Barbara. I am currently the production stage manager for Opera Carolina and the Chautauqua Opera. Opera Carolina has closed its doors for the season. Their individual singers and their chorus, though, have been posting live events like other Wolf Trap alum have been doing. So if you get a chance to tune into any of the Opera Carolina Facebook events, wonderful choristers who are spending their time to keep the arts alive. Right now, we're waiting to hear if Chautauqua will still have a season. And if they don't, it may end up being very close to what Wolf Trap is doing for their young artists, which is still giving them the classes and the training, just no live performances with no audiences. And on that note, just a quick story. The last paying job I had was for Opera Grand Rapids. And we were supposed to do a live performance of Scalia Ginsburg. And at the last second, with the concerns and the shutdowns happening, the company was getting ready to just send us home. But instead, they sent the audience home and brought in a TV crew. And we were able to do a live broadcast of the performance instead, so that all ticket holders could actually, log in and see the performance. So it was a last minute hustle, and the company got it together. So they still managed to pay their artists and pay their production team one last job before everything shut down. So it was pretty impressive that they hustled and did that for us, because I honestly think they did it more for us as the company than they did for the audience. So what else? Another unrelated to what I just said, but a quick story about my time at George Mason. I started at George Mason wanting to be a director, and that was my pocket dream. Was I was going to be a stage director. I was going to do it. And so my focus for my time at Mason was to direct. And luckily, while I was there, George Mason also had a Theater of the First Amendment, which was a professional theater company on campus that allowed students to get hands-on professional work while we were there taking classes. And I was a little aggressive, and I tried to work on every show I could. And I was able to take those experiences and turn them into the student productions that we got to work on. And so when I graduated in '94, I actually had a working resume, which was amazing. And I'm very fortunate that I had that. Unfortunately for me, I was not a good director. And this is through no fault of Rick Davis. I just was not a good director. And so when I was out in the real world with my resume and directing, I was bad at it. I was not good. And luckily, I was still in touch with people like Rick Davis, who said, while you were back in school, you did really well as a stage manager, because that was one of the things I decided to do, was stage manage in order to get close to the directors and learn the process firsthand. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to direct. And he's like, but you were a good stage manager. And I'm like, no, okay. So I tried it. I did a show and I loved it. I loved myself. I loved the cast. I loved the production. And I said, okay, all right. And it clicked. And the one step further was I was once again asking Rick, well, what do I do now? And Rick said, well, I'm directing an opera. Why don't you come in and stage manage that? And I said, I don't do opera. And he's like, no, seriously, you should come and try this. I'm like, no, okay, fine. So I went and I did this opera with much guidance from Rick, because I had no opera experience. And I did it. I loved it. And once I had it on my resume, I got calls for opera, and that's been my path ever since. For the most part, is doing regional opera, and I love it. So talk about a sidestep from what you thought you wanted when you went to school to what you ended up doing. That's what I do, except for right now. So Is there anything else I should talk about in this moment?
That's a great introduction. I'm glad you told the opera story because it was, I think that was just a great moment in my life too, to be able to, first of all, I needed a stage manager for this production in Boise, Idaho. And I thought, Valerie's a pretty good stage manager and we can figure the opera thing out. So, so that'll be all right. And it just illustrates something. I was chatting with folks before the formal part of the program about how I always have been a believer in nonlinear career paths. And that's a nice example of a sideways turn, an exit ramp that turns into a new highway. So thank you, Valerie. We'll come back to you for more insight later on. Would you favor us with a little bit of your life story?
Yes. Thanks, Rick. Hello from the West Coast. My name is Wee. I was born and raised in Reading, Pennsylvania, and I grew up in Northern Virginia after high school. I graduated from George Mason in 2007 with a BFA in Arts and Visual Technology. Funny story before that, my career goal was actually to be a tattoo artist. So I went down that path, worked with a few local shops in the area, but during that time, I just couldn't see myself living that lifestyle. So long story short, I ended up at George Mason University studying graphic design, mainly print because web was still new at that time. But I remember being in a class with a professor, I don't know if he's still there today, Don Starr, and he created
Don is very much with us. In fact, he's the associate director of the School of Art. So.
I'll tell him I said hello.
I will.
He created a schedule in using web technology, HTML, CSS, and I was just like blown away. And from there on, I went real deep into web and design. So after George Mason, my career path was a little bit odd. I took a lot of different jobs. The design community was mainly print and branding. Web was still new. So you had to have a lot of experience around that. So I basically just took on a lot of different jobs that were non-design related. One was for a government contract. What was cool about that was I was able to travel to different army bases around the world. But during that same time, I was trying to create my own path, and I was freelancing, building websites, doing branding for small startups in the local DC area. And that actually built my portfolio of work that got me into PBS. And when I joined PBS, that was mainly about broadcast, but this was during the time that they were doing a major web overhaul of their presence. So I got to touch that when I was there, their mobile app during that time for the iPhone. And I just took pretty much anything that came my way, anything that was available, I picked it up. Just knowing that I'm not good at it now, but I'll just get better as I can continue to go on. And it was just a really new space. Anyone who entered at that time, nobody knew anything. So if you picked up knowledge then, I felt it was a good move. From there on, I joined a local startup called Vox Media. It was a small startup with a handful of people in a small, tiny row house in DuPont Circle. Vox Media at that time was just an online media blog, and today it's a big media media company. If you heard of Vox Media, Vox.com, The Verge, SB Nation, Curb Eater, those are all the things that they own and create. From there, I was able to pretty much wear many hats: art direction, internal branding, building software, building platforms for advertising companies. So I wasn't shy there either. Anything that was available, I was always raising my hand saying, give me this, I want that. So that was Vox Media was the thing that catapulted me to Netflix today. It was one project that required art direction, website design, collaborating remote with teams and global teams. And that got noticed and picked up by a product manager at Netflix, and they reached out to me. And long story short, I'm here today, and I've been at Netflix for 5 years. The team that I'm on and support is called Studio XD. And we are, when I started there in 2015, we are the team that supports studio production. So if you remember anything about Netflix, it started out as a online DVD rental company. And then we got into producing our own content. Well, streaming became a thing because of the internet. And then we took a bet with House of Cards and created our own content. And from that moment on, we became basically a studio. We have to know how to do what Hollywood's doing, how to create movies. So our team in Studio XD, so specifically that I'm on, is we support creative production and promotion. And what that means is the moment a script to one of your favorite shows, Tiger King, for example, the moment it's pitched to us, gets produced, post-production, after that is all wrapped up, our team helps a lot of creatives and folks in between get that piece of content onto the Netflix service, the member service. So when you log into Netflix, when you see that big display, that video and all those little cards and rows, all that content, all that synopses, information, ratings, thumbnail art, those are a lot of different teams in the ecosystem that help get that information up there. So we build the software that support folks. A big part of our goal is also to drive innovation, which is bring member joy to our viewers, but also save costs within the process to help Netflix. So that's my story in a nutshell. If I could say how George Mason has benefited my career, I would say in the beginning, it would be the student body, the diversity, the people and relationships that I built. I had the opportunity to learn about AIGA, student body group, and that helped lead me into other avenues where I've collaborated with other folks outside of college. And to this day, I'm still friends with them.
Thank you. That's a great story and another good nonlinear journey. So thank you for validating our thesis. And we have a sample of 2 now, which basically proves it these days, right? So Anqi in Shanghai, good morning. It is 5:32 a.m. your time. So yes. How are you? It's good to see you.
Great to see you guys. And I feel very honored to be one of the panelists, and I apologize if I look a bit drowsy. And hello everyone. I graduated from arts management program at Mason in 2011 with focus on marketing and PR. Before joining Mason, I've been playing the violin for about 23 years professionally. But it came to a point that I knew I wouldn't become a famous soloist, but I could probably help someone to become one. So that's the reason why I decided to really move to managing arts. And then so I chose Mason, and I'm very proud that I made that choice. And so currently I'm working for Universal Picture China for about 5 years now to promote all the blockbuster to China market, such as, I'm sure everyone knows Fast and Furious, Minions, Jurassic World, etc. And now during this this unfortunate time, I'm definitely grateful that I still get to keep the job, because the majority of film industries are being hugely hit, and thousands of cinemas are closing down. I'm sure everywhere of the world. So I'm very grateful that I still have the job, and I can share a bit more about this industry later. But so before Universal Pictures, I also worked for AEG, the world's largest live entertainment company, to promote a lot of great concerts and tours. So I was very fortunate to work directly with the Rolling Stones, Bruno Mars, Taylor Swift, Kobe Bryant. Yeah, and it's very challenging, but also very rewarding for me to really get to know the commercial, how to operate a commercial entertainment, and which is quite different than my other previous job, which is mainly focused on nonprofit. So going back to the nonprofit, so during my study at Mason, I'm also very grateful that I got to work with the former dean reader, and for the CVPA. So I got to do a lot of new initiatives, because back then there were not too many international students, and also there was still kind of starting to bridge between Mason and Chinese institutions, especially through the form of arts. So the highlight of my internship that was to bring the Mason Jazz Band to have a tour in China, Beijing and Shanghai, which turned out a huge successful event, because back then jazz, I mean, it's almost 10 years ago. So back then jazz wasn't so hugely recognized in China. So bring a very nice jazz band and to the concert and to the master class was a really eye-opening experience for those schools and institutions in China. So after this internship, I was very lucky to have some other part-time job and also full-time job working for Kennedy Center, Choral Art Society in Washington, Pyramid Art Center, and Culture Tours in DC for various campaigns and projects, mainly all in branding, marketing, and PR. And thanks to all the resources Mason has been giving for the students, also the great location. And then also I try my best to shamelessly attend a lot of like cocktail events, or because I was pretty involved in a lot of help with my bilingual skills. And also I love taking photos, and I actually developed a lot of photography skills, which are even now still benefiting my job by contributing a lot of photos professionally to some magazines. So I try my best to participate and get involved in as many organizations as possible in DC area. And so I returned to my hometown, Shanghai, in late 2012. My passion and experience for nonprofit and cultural exchange led me a job to work for U.S. Embassy for the pilot project to promote very original U.S. art form, not only jazz, but also folk music and even the Navajo, the folk music. So it's very, very, never happened before in China. So it was a really rewarding experience. Unfortunately, because of the funding issue, so after first year, so the whole program had to be terminated. But then I wanted to continue my passion for nonprofit, but actually, I'm not sure everyone knows, in China, there's not really a nonprofit for arts system, as you may call. It's still very premature. It's a bit even tricky, that I realized it really lacks of public awareness and official acknowledgement even by the government. So it's very tricky that you work for a nonprofit, but people will accuse, oh, this is not really nonprofit. There's no really official tax exemption system, and then there's not really art patron. Now it's growing, definitely, but a few years ago, it was not really art patron. People are just still think they are just consumers and then making quick monies, even it's a very great opera and everything. So I had to, but I'm still happy that I shifted to commercial. So that's how I now eventually landed my job after the IAG, working for concert, now working for Universal Pictures. And yeah, so I'm very grateful for all the experience. I actually came back with my husband, and when I was still pregnant, a couple months ago, I came back, literally just went all the way back to Mason, to DC and Mason, to visit some professors and some of my best friends who I met at the class. And then, so I know everybody there, they moved on with their career, they have family, but I just took my husband to the campus, and I'm like, this is all every single corner. I had a great conversations, and I had a coffee with different faculty and friends, and studied different projects, and then attending all the free concert at the Center for the Arts, and then all the great memories. And I so really really grateful for the 3 years at Mason and all the jobs and experience I had. So yeah, again, thanks for having me.
Well, that's what a wonderful. You also prove our point about nonlinear career paths. You've had several, and each one of them very, very meaningful. And I see Dr. Monson, the director of the School of Music, has added a comment to our chat, which I was also going to mention. We're still talking about that jazz trip to China. I mean, truly, now 9 years later, it's still resonating through our musical community, and I'm glad to hear that it also had a positive effect.
Yeah, it's very memorable.
Yeah, that's
yes.
absolutely terrific. So congratulations on all your achievements, including your daughter, I think it is.
It's a baby boy.
Baby boy. Okay, well, congratulations. Wonderful.
He was just great.
Yeah, and he apparently is not awake right now.
Yeah. No, he's awake, and I try to shut all the doors we have. So yeah.
Very good.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Well, we'll come back to you and talk about. I'm particularly interested in the not-for-profit commercial sort of that dialogue between those two sectors. If we have time to talk about that later.
Sure.
Kelsey Hunter, tell us about being, among other things, 30 under 30.
Oh gosh.
What does that mean?
Well, I'm not under 30 anymore. So.
Okay.
I got in just at the last minute. It almost felt like cheating. Let's see. So about me, I'm Kelsey Hunter, founder and CEO of Paloma. I was born in Lemoore, California, which is a shout out to the middle of nowhere. And I grew up mostly in Northern Virginia, Annandale, Centerville, Fairfax. My mom now lives across the street from George Mason. So I see it every time I come home. And let's see, I graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Art degree with a specialty in graphic design from the School of Visual Arts in 2011. And now I'm running a company. How did I get here? Let's see. So I think I'm probably going to echo a lot of what everyone else shared along their journeys. In terms of, kind of career path, I started kind of playing around with graphic design things starting probably in like 8th grade yearbook, and then high school, all sorts of literary magazine and all sorts of things. So I was already kind of on that kind of track by the time I got to George Mason. And while I was there, I worked a few different jobs through college. This is my cat, Blue. Everyone wants to say hi. Hello. Okay, we're going back. Let's see. So I worked a few different jobs through college. Through the graphic design program, I had access to an internship actually down the street at a nonprofit called SGIA, and I ended up interning there and then became an associate after graduating. And really what was interesting is that at Mason, and I didn't realize this was so interesting or different at the time, but everything that we learned there were really all the fundamentals and things that you need to know to be a really great artist or designer in person. But we also had access to so many other different types of skill sets and disciplines, which when I was, even interning and in my first job, I was doing everything from editorial to environmental. I built and shipped the email every week and worked on the website and everything else. So that kind of like broad set of skills really helped set me up from there, which from there was I started working in digital advertising in New York. So I moved up here about 6 months after graduating, and I worked on websites and apps for a lot of big brands, a lot of the Johnson & Johnson portfolio of companies like Neutrogena. Designed a logo for Tux at one point, which had a button in it, which was my grandmother was very proud of. And I ended up working on Jägermeister for about a year. If you were following the Jaeger Facebook page for some period of time, I want to say like 2013, you would have seen me in a lot of the photos. So I had a lot of fun, got to know the community in New York really well, and started freelancing for startups, which is how I got more onto the product side of things. So I started designing apps and software, moved into marketing software with a company here in New York, went from there to running design at a startup that went through Y Combinator in 2015, if anyone's familiar with the kind of like startup funding ecosystem, and really just kind of jumped around and did as much as I could. I think that's one of the things that I think is probably a similar characteristic of a lot of people that go to Mason, is we're all really hungry and like to do good work. So I had a lot of fun trying a lot of different things, but always in the same category of designing for experiences, and whether that was helping a group of people figure out how to build something or building something for people to use, which is how I eventually got to where I am today. So in 2016, I quit my job. It happened to be right before the election, and I was freelancing, but I put a group of people together to build some open source software that was set up to help people call Congress using Facebook Messenger. So with that, we were building all sorts of bot stuff and software to run these experiences. And that ended up being a really great project that we ended up handing over to some other local DC groups to use for their campaign work. And I actually spun out Paloma out of that. So we had built a system that was, a great tool for marketing within Messenger, and that was where all my background had come from before that. So it became kind of like an appealing, interesting concept to other folks in my network, including some angel investors. So I had a group, a nonprofit said, hey, do you want to come work for us and build this software with us? And I was like, if I wanted to work for someone, I would do that, but I don't. So how about I build the software and sell it to you? And they said, that sounds great. Do you want some angel investment to do that? And I was like, yes. So I don't think that's how it normally goes, but that's what happened. So in 2017, I started Paloma, launched at the end of the year. And today what we do is we work with e-commerce brands to help people shop on Facebook Messenger by building like really curated shopping experiences. So we work with brands like Joybird, Framebridge, which is DC based, let's see, Bombas Socks, Andy Swim, a lot of the like fun direct to consumer brands that you probably see on your Instagram feeds all the time. And yeah, it's been a really great experience to have a team of 3 other full-time employees. We're now venture backed, and it's really funny because while it sounds like a very different job to be a CEO, it's really not that different from designing anything else. And I think that's what I really love about it. I think I'm over on time, so I'll stop talking.
No, that's fascinating, and I'm intrigued by the there's a little bit of activism in implicit in that platform, and then there's a real strong sort of commercial aspect as well. So I mean, we're sort of crossing lines here between all kinds of different realms, whether it's politics and the arts or profit making commercial ventures versus nonprofit. I want to turn back. We have about 12 minutes or so left. I want to first of all invite the audience to ask questions either through chat or through raising your hand, which I know I will get help from my great team of producers here if somebody raises their hand, or you can type a question into chat and I'll try to relay it. But while we're waiting for those questions to percolate up, I want to ask anybody, but I want to start with just to single him out for a minute. In the current, the temporary crisis, I hope temporary crisis that we're in, how has that affected your part of what Netflix does? Because Netflix is, if anything, more pervasive than ever in all of our lives now, but how has it changed the rhythm of your work, if it has?
Right. I think I'm very humbled that I'm at Netflix and a company like this who supports remote work. We have, or any company that has technology these days, that I think that's the differentiator that allows our team to work remote and collaborate. Before this, everybody was co-located. So if I had a meeting with a stakeholder, I would have to travel to LA maybe and talk to my team. But a large part of my day is working and collaborating with teams through software that allows us to over-communicate. Zoom, for instance, Google Hangouts, Slack, like all those tools definitely help us communicate and express our ideas and share. We're still learning. There are other folks in different departments like studio production where they don't have that benefit. So on that side of the business, we'll have to wait it out. But everyone else in between, we can use technology to communicate.
Yeah, thank you. That's so interesting. And we're learning a lot at CVPA as well, including today. Valerie, I'm going to kick it back to you for a second. You mentioned that Grand Rapids Opera sort of last minute improvised live stream experience, which I followed a little bit on Facebook, although I ended up not tuning into the broadcast just because of schedule purposes. Do you see more of that potentially happening in the opera industry? Are there projects percolating where people might try to come back and just do something that's digitally native?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the biggest talk right now, is how to still keep the audiences interested in our product while keeping people safe. And, you know, we're used to having, 1,500, 2,000 people sitting in a house with us, and we can't do it. So it's definitely what companies are talking about, doing smaller shows to, instead of having a cast of 100, on stage in an orchestra with 75, 80 people in the pit, smaller shows, healthier size productions, and broadcasting, and trying to still keep the audience interested in the product without minimizing what opera singers do. I mean, people are wowed by being able to see Met experiences on stage, on your TV, but live opera is why people go. The artists are just, they're incredible, and that's why people go. So we have to try to keep in touch with the artists and their craft while still projecting to an audience at a safe distance. So a handful of companies that I've been working for, have been talking about how to now do this, how to do smaller shows with a broadcast while still keeping the quality of the artist's integrity.
And I'm gonna stay with you for just a second, because Patrick Sargent posted a highly relevant question, in which I'll read for you. How does that impact artists when they perform without the audience to feed off emotionally?
It's hard for them. You see them, in their living rooms. They'll still dress up for, the shows. It's hard. It's not that they're out there to sing for the applause, but they're out there to bring a composer's music to an audience. They're not there for themselves. So when you're not there for them, there's an emotional element that's missing for them. But again, it's not about, the audience response. It's about what they want to bring to the audience. So it's hard, and it's a new level of performance that people have to figure out how to learn it, how to perform for just the camera, for just the accompanist in the room. It's a new level that performers have to learn.
Thank you. Anqi, a quick question to return to one of your themes that you talked about when you were speaking to us about the way the film industry is coping with the current moment, with closed theaters. How are you getting your content out, and do you anticipate reopening anytime soon?
Well, actually, like domestically speaking, we are getting better, and even the rest of the world are still fighting with it. But the government still try to definitely not letting any congregation indoor happening. So definitely most of, I would say, second tier city, third tier city, which were predominantly composing our box office, are actually suffering. But like Beijing, Shanghai, all of these first tier city are still okay, because most of the cinema, they are in the big shopping mall, which are all being a bit like, being given a bit subsidy by government, try to survive, because eventually they know they're going to survive with all the other luxury goods happening in the shopping mall. And then a lot of, very interestingly, actually during the Chinese New Year, which was the peak of this virus outbreak, and then one of those there could be a lot of billions money made for those Chinese movie, because they couldn't be playing at the cinema. And then some of the movie, they are very smartly, but which is still very controversial now, they switch to completely freely streaming online. And of course, it's happy for all the audience. They don't need to pay they don't need to pay any penny to see the film. But it was a huge loss for all the advertising behind that, because there were a lot of promotional partners. They were paying all the money for outdoor advertising, everything, and also the cinema, they were investing for all the promotion. So it was a huge loss for them, but for consumer, they're happy. And also again, China is heavily relying on mobile. So there are almost 1.25 billion mobile users in China. So the advertising, the promotional method are still heavily rely on mobile. So it's not being affected that much. Yeah.
That's a huge market, but if people get used to not paying for anything, we might all be in trouble.
It is, and then we are very sad. And as Universal, we are financially sound, but for example, the 007, which we are supposed to be releasing this April, we have to postpone a whole year. And even Fast and Furious, this is like a huge loss. So what we can do is actually, we are actually still holding the audience excited for the previous film. And again, we are partnering with a lot of digital partners to get audience excited by releasing a lot of teasers and trailers, and then hoping that we get to release as soon as possible. Yeah.
So this is a coming attractions moment that lasts for several months instead of just a few minutes before the film.
Yeah. So it's hard to build a momentum, keep building a momentum, and yeah.
Thank you. A question has come in from Natalie. This is a general question for the panel. What was or is your biggest motivator for getting to where you are today with your career? What was your biggest motivator for getting to where you are today with your career? And I'm just going to pick on Kelsey real quick because I was going to ask her a different question, but this is a great question for you. And then anybody else who wants to answer, please feel free.
That is a really good question. I think motivation is a really tough question to be answering in the midst of a pandemic. I'm running a company, but I'm having a very hard time right now, just to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, that's it.
But in terms of getting to here, I think at different stages of life and different positions and what you have access to, motivations will vary. I think I've always been motivated to be incredibly productive. Like, I like to make things, I like to build things, and I like to solve problems. And so the bigger the challenge, the more interesting it was for me, and the more exciting it was to tackle. And I think that was my motivator for a long time. I think eventually I realized that people stuff was a lot more compelling sometimes than anything else. And so your motivators might start changing. For me, it changed a little bit around, how do you help other people get stuff done? And that's a really interesting question when it goes beyond not just the person you're building for, but the other people that are building with you. And so I'd say that it has changed over time, but I've always had a pretty big drive towards, doing a lot. I don't know how else to put it. It's not like I didn't, start out by saying I was going to start a company someday. Although I think while I was at Mason, I probably would have said, I think I'll start a design agency someday or something like that. I always had big goals, but they changed over time because I didn't necessarily need to know exactly what that looked like. I just wanted to make sure that I was being challenged and making the most out of my abilities and things that I've learned throughout my life, and helping other people get there along the way, I guess.
Terrific. Anybody else want to tackle that one on our panel? That's such an interesting question. I love what you said. I see Valerie raising her hand. I'll come to you in 2 seconds. But Kelsey, I wanted to just pick up one of your thoughts to kind of lift it up, and that is the idea of finding pleasure or finding meaning in doing something for somebody else, or your work has impact, beyond maybe the first client or the first, the commissioner or whatever. I think that's such a strong artistic impulse, because I think artists naturally want to make a difference. They want to communicate. They want to affect, more than the person they're just talking to. And I just wanted to single that out as a really important idea. Over to you, Valerie.
Well, mine was actually a little bit more selfish. I was surrounded by extremely talented classmates who graduated as actors and who are going on and making waves in the business as performers. And I didn't want to be left behind. And so there was a lot of their go get them. I was like, well, I got to go get them too. And so that was a big motivator, that and rent. Just you take whatever job comes down the pike. It's not the big job, it's not the glamorous job, but it was the little job that ended up, making you shine a little bit brighter to people. And so that was actually something else that affected me when I wasn't getting the big jobs that I thought I should have been getting. But the little jobs were so appreciative of the work that I was able to do for them that I was like, oh, I get to work for people. I get to do things for people. And, you know, maybe I have to do 6 or 7 of these jobs to pay the rent, but I'm doing it. And it, you know, and it built on from there. I was able to then take the bigger jobs. But it was mostly competition with my friends that made me get off the couch and stop feeling sorry for myself, that I wasn't doing the big work that I thought was going to fall into my lap initially. So that's my selfish.
No, it's not selfish at all. It's the power of the cohort, right? It's being inspired by your peers to do the good work that you're capable of. So that is that's true. Well, you know what? It's almost 6 o'clock. So does anybody on our panel have a final word that they've just been dying to get in? Because you've all been amazing correspondents today. But if I've left anything on the table, this is your opportunity. If I were with you in a room, I could tell who was about to speak by your breathing, but I can't intuit that over the distance. So it looks like you were having a thought.
Yeah, I just want to say that for those who have been furloughed or who are looking for work, I would suggest you look into Netflix. We're also hiring folks across the board because it is a big industry, which depends on a lot of creative folks, artists, studio production, carpenters, yeah, across the board. And it's a global company as well.
I think that is the best possible way to end this conversation, with a with a piece of profound advice. Thank you very much for that, making that known. And I want to thank everybody on our panel, Valerie, Anqi, Kelsey, and all of the people who tuned in. It was a great audience, great comments. And please be safe, be well, and tune in again. I think it's next week already, isn't it? For the next installment of the Cocktails with the Dean. Maybe I'll actually have a cocktail next week now that I've done this once. And there's Valerie with her, whatever that is. And Mason Arts at Home continues to offer a wide range of really interesting stuff. Zach Wilcox tomorrow, and going on from there. So thank you all. And I am now going to see if I can figure out how to fade to black. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.